morning, people, and welcome once again to the official topic talk. Hope you're all doing great, and hope you're all enjoying this lovely fucking heat. But I know it's killing me. It's just too much, way too much heat. But enjoy it while it's here, people. Right, let's get this started. Telford child sex inquiry wasted 10 years before stopping grooming gangs, says hero cop. Well, I'm not too sure about the hero side of things, but that person on the screen is former DCI Alan Edwards, has spoken out over shocking failures to stop paedophile gangs. Exclusive. Telford child sex inquiry wasted 10 years before stopping grooming gangs, says hero cop. Police detective who worked on operation to stop paedophile rings in Telford exposes scandal of grooming gangs evidence that sat in the vault for more than a decade before investigators acted on it. Now this just goes back to a couple of previous videos that I've done, where I was saying that there was a lot of police corruption within the West Mercia Police in Telford. Money was exchanged hands for all of this to be brushed underneath the carpet, and the excuse that they came out with, that they didn't want to be seen as being racist. I mean, that's just a load of crock. There's a heck of a lot more to this than meets the eye. And in my previous video, you'll notice that I've got the full report, which is over 1,300 pages long, which has been split into volume 1, 2, 3 and 4. I'll also put it into the comment section of this video. Do take some time and do have a look at it. It's all the findings, and all the truth now has finally come out to the police corruption in the Telford area, and the failings that they've served upon the victims. In this town, it's shameful. A hero cop praised in this week's Telford child sex inquiry report today reveals how evidence against grooming gangs lay in the police vault for over a decade before being properly investigated. I wonder if this was by the officer who got sacked, who also received a brown envelope full of money. I'm wondering if it was him that hid it away in the vault and wouldn't let people at it because he was getting paid off the grooming gangs and also drug firms in Telford to keep it all under wraps. No, I just wonder. I wonder if that's going to come out next. The paperwork pinpointed key paedophiles in 1999 who were preying on teenage girls. They included monster Mohammed Yunus. He's a right dirty fucking bastard. That Mohammed Yunus from Wellington Dirty bastard. Well, he ain't going to be welcome back in Telford when he comes out of jail. The Muslim community will see to that. Who went on to run a rape house in a Shropshire town for years before he was convicted in 2012. Now that's 13 years that he had been grooming. He had been running a rape house for 13 years, and the West Mercia police just decided to brush it under the carpet because the chief inspector of the West Mercia police at that time was taking obscene amounts of money to make it just disappear. After police investigation, Operation Chalice. Now former DCI Alan Edwards, who worked on Chalice, has decided to break his silence to the Sunday Mirror. I'm glad he's come forward and he's speaking out now about it. I mean, even though it's 20 years later, he could have saved a lot of young girls from going through this trauma in their life if he had spoken up sooner. He did so because it was our investigation in 2018, then mocked by officials as made up on the back of a fag packet. Now it's disgusting, you know, for authority figures to turn around and say that it was all made up on lies, made up on the back of a fag packet. They should all now be looked into. They should all now lose their jobs. They should all now not ever be allowed to have a job in authority ever again. It's disgusting the way that they've covered it all up for over 20 years. You know, I think the victims, they need a bit of compensation through all of this now, through the failings of the authorities in Telford that received more than 1,000 girls had been abused in Telford from the early 80s onwards, continuing even after Eunice and 6 others were jailed. Mr. Edward tells how his squad discovered the explosive file on Asian men grooming girls as young as 11. You wonder what goes through the minds of these people in authorities that could have stopped this 20 years ago. You know, they've taken away lives of young children. 3 have lost their life. 1 was murdered. 1 was involved in, they say, a car accident. And the 3rd one just couldn't take it no more and decided to take her own life. Now each and every one of these people that brushed it all under the carpets for the past 20 years should be held accountable for the 3 murdered people, 3 murdered young girls. 1 was murdered. 1, she died through a car incident where, if I remember rightly, she was sat on the bonnet of a car, and a incident took place, and she lost her life. That was down to murder. We all know that. We all know. The good people of Telford know she was murdered to keep quiet. The same as Lucy Lowe. She was murdered to keep quiet. And the 3rd young girl at the time, she just couldn't take it no more, and she committed suicide because of it all. So each and every person that has helped to cover up this disgusting mess in Telford need to be held accountable for each and every one of them 1,000 victims. Mohammed Jonas was convicted in 2012 after running a rape house in Telford. Now, let's just leave his picture up on the screen for everyone to see. Mohammed Jonas was convicted in 2012 after running a rape house in Telford. Now, this scumbag is the worst of the worst, acting as if he's a businessman, hiding the fact from all his family and his friends within the Muslim community that he was responsible for these hideous crimes. He won't be welcome back in Telford by the Muslim community. That's guaranteed. He claims he was told not to rock the boat when he joined the Telford division of West Mercia Police for fear of inflaming racial tensions with the town's Pakistani community. Well, I'm not racist by far, not at all. But if you notice, right, it's by the Muslim Pakistani community of Telford. Now, the Indian population in Telford, they're top notch, they're very, very good people. I haven't known one bad Indian race person in the whole of the Telford community. Just goes to show you the difference between cultures and how people want to carry their lives under the word religion, and then when the heat comes on top of them, they want to start calling us racist. You know, when unfortunately the West Mercia Police was gambling with young girls' lives 20, 30 years ago. They were gambling with the young girls' lives in this town, all for the sake they didn't want to be seen, you know, for these dirty monsters to call them racists. And I'm sorry, the police took a massive gamble, and they played with 1,000 young girls' lives. They should have just gone ahead, right, and let them shout fucking that we're racist. Shout that, you know, the police force in Telford are racist. That's what they should have done. They should have protected our children. And he reveals his determination to nail the gangs was driven by his own failure to save a 15-year-old girl from being raped by her father in the 1980s. His revelations came after the findings of the independent inquiry set up because of our probe into the scandal. It concluded child sex crimes in the town were ignored for generations and generations, and that agencies blamed children for the abuse. Now this is the side that I couldn't get, because around about the early 80s, when a couple of young girls did come forward, they were looked at as if they were prostitutes. They were looked at as if they had instigated it. They were looked at as if they were enjoying what they were doing. They were never once looked at from authorities that, you know, they had fallen foul of these dirty, dirty fucking old men from the Muslim community in Telford. They were never once looked at as a victim. Back in the 80s, it was always their fault. they were looked at as a young girl aged 11, 12 or 13 had a boyfriend, right, who was 40 years old. Now the law clearly states, right, you cannot make a choice or decision under 16 years old in a sexual manner. So how is it physically possible that the law in the 80s looked at it that it was a relationship that they were in, when quite clearly, given their age, they can't give consent? They're police officers, they make the law, they withhold and uphold the law, but yet all they could come out with was it's their boyfriend or they're a prostitute. Well, the truth's finally come out now, and like I say, you know, I hope all these authority figures are held accountable. They blame children for the abuse. Tom Crawford QC's report also found crimes were not investigated because of nervousness about race. Girls were treated as common prostitutes, and that some officers in West Mercia Police had turned a blind eye to what was happening. Mr. Edwards was praised in the report, with 3 colleagues for being dogged in their pursuit of justice for the victims, despite huge personal costs. Now there's Tom Crowther QC chaired the inquiry into the Telford abuse scandal. It's just a shame that this guy didn't become the whistleblower back in 1999, which is 23 years ago. He should have come out then. He says he and his team were stunned to discover the 1999 files that had been locked away. It should have been properly investigated and action noted then, he says. We put it in the disclosure file to ensure it was properly recorded. What was important was we used this intelligence, but we need to acknowledge mistakes were made and learn from them. There were other, even more sinister problems to reckon with too, he said. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. He said, my officers told me no one had wanted to do anything about it due to the racial element, and it could be a career ender for whoever took it on. It would never have taken any officer's career. It would have made them the hero for bringing it all to light and for saving these 1,000 girls that these fucking monsters went on to abuse over decades. But Mr. Edwards had personal reasons for not letting it go. As a beat cop in Telford in the late 80s, he tried to prize problems from a 15-year-old runaway, but she wouldn't talk, so I took her home. I went on leave and returned to her house to find it empty. Neighbours said everyone knew the father had been molesting his daughter. He raped her the night I took her home. I had sent her home to be raped, but he wasn't to know that. In 2012, Mr. Edwards saw some closure. One of the defendants in the case of files, Mohammed Jonas, now 69, was convicted of facilitating the abuse of girls. He got 2.5 years for allowing his flat to be used for exploitation. Now, 2.5 years, people, that means he's out in 12 months. You know, where's the justice in any of that? That definitely does not suit the crime what he's done. He's ruined young girls' lives by letting these monsters use his flat to abuse young girls. You can't put a price on that. You know, crimes like that should receive life. Now here we have in the photo, we have Azhar Ali Mahmood, killed abuse victim Lucy Lowe, and her mother and the sister in the fire. Now, to the right, that's Lucy Lowe. Abuse victim Lucy Lowe, pictured with her daughter Tasnim, who was killed in the fire. Now Tasnim has gone on, and I think she's about 26 years old now, and I don't think she understood, you know, what her dad really was like. But I know she's put a major report in because he's up for parole, and she doesn't want him to ever see sunlight again. Which I don't blame her. At the end of the day, this fucking dirty monster, Azhar Ali Mahmood, killed her mum. All because he wanted them silenced. And then he later went on to threaten other victims that the same would happen to them if they spoke out. Again, he's another one that will never get back in the Muslim community at Telford again. That's a guarantee. Yunus was jailed along with 6 others, including brothers Adel and Mubarak Ali, sentenced to 18 and 14 years respectively for abusing and trafficking girls. Mr. Edwards also revealed how the abused teens were put under pressure not to testify, with offenders threatening to sue police by alleging the investigation was false and based on racial discrimination. He said the suspects promised the victims thousands of pounds and that they would split the money 50-50. We told the suspects and victims we were aware of the conspiracy. This stopped further talk. Mr. Crowther's report told how brazen rapists picked their victims up from school, and how a pregnancy spike in the early 2000s was dismissed as a sexual health issue. He added, without the Mirror's reporting, the truth about Telford would still be buried. It was fundamental in the process which led to this report. Our investigators estimated of the scale of abuse was described as made up on the back of a fag packet by Andrew Mason, head of the Telford and Wrekin Safeguarding Board at the time. Now he's another one that I do believe was taking backhanders. You know, all this will come out. Mr. Crowther this week described it as a measured, reasonable and non-sensitive assessment of what had actually happened. We also linked the deaths of 3 victims to the scandal. Pregnant Lucy Lowe, 16, was killed with her mum Eileen, 49, and sister Sarah, 17, in a blaze started by her abuser Azhar Ali Mahmood in 2000 to silence her. She had his first child, daughter Tasnim, as she was only 14 years old. Becky Watson, 13, died in a car accident described as a prank in 2002. Now that was the one that I was mentioning a bit ago, because I do know the family on that side, so I knew one or two things. It wasn't a prank. It was simply to silence her. That was the second life that was taken. After 2 years of rape and trafficking, her friend Vicky Round died at 20 in 2009. Again, I knew the Round family very, very well. After gangs got her hooked on crack cocaine at 12 and heroin at 14. She later went on to overdose and take her life because of what these grooming gangs had put her through. Mr. Crowther said in his report, "The reality is West Mercia Police did turn a blind eye and chose not to see what was obvious. I'm certain that the perpetrators of child sexual exploitation were bold and pen in their offending during the late 1990s and early 2000s. It is impossible not to wonder how different the lives of those victims may have been had West Mercia Police done its most basic job and acted upon these reports of abuse. It is also impossible not to include that there were a real chance, unnecessary suffering, and even deaths of children may have been avoided." The Telford report also vindicted ex-police chaplain Keith Osmond Smith, suspended after telling us of adult men seen trying to coax drunk teenagers into cars. He was reinstated after an inquiry but later quit. Sean Davis, leader of Telford and Wrekin Council, said, "I want to thank the Sunday Mirror for shining a light on child sexual exploitation in Telford and supporting the victims and survivors to tell their personal and harrowing stories. We are deeply sorry for the pain and suffering that has been caused." Well, I don't think any of you are actually sorry for anything to do with this inquiry. All this could have been dealt with in 1999. But you weren't thinking of the victims then. What about if it was one of your daughters? That's how they should be thinking on this inquiry to end it, and what reprimands should be coming to the people that decided to brush it all under the carpet. Assistant Chief Constable Richard Cooper of West Mercia Police added, "I would like to apologise to the loved ones of anyone whose life has been marked by child sexual exploitation and to the victims and survivors themselves." And the daughter of one murdered Telford abuse victim revealed her shock at the contents of the report. Now imagine that girl Nasmin having to read through this report, knowing what happened to her mum and the failings of the authorities and the police. There's Tasnim, survivor of the fire set off by her dad Azhar Ali Mahmood. He was then 25 which killed her mum, Lucy, who was just 16 when she was pregnant. Now imagine what she's had to endure reading through these reports, knowing full well the police just brushed it all underneath the carpet. And now, 2 decades later, the truth is actually coming out. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. Tasnim Lowe, 23, asked, how can anyone in authority do this when they have their own daughters? Exactly what I was saying. Tasnim survived the fire that killed her mum and family, then just 16 months old. She only lived because Mahmoud carried her out of the house and placed her under a tree in the garden. Mahmoud, a cabbie in Telford, was jailed following the fire. See, now the other thing that's getting me on all this, right, is he got 18 years for murder, but not once has he been brought in front of the judge for the sex crimes that he's committed. I'm hoping this is rectified. I hope this is changed, that if he ever did see the day of light, he'll be back in front of the court to answer for the rape charges. Mahmoud, the cab driver in Telford, was jailed following the fire in August 2000 for a minimum of 18 years for murdering Lucy and her family, and is still behind bars after being denied parole in 2020. But he has never faced sexual abuse charges, despite meeting Lucy at the age of 13 and getting her pregnant at 14. Tasnim said, the scale of abuse is disgusting and shocking. On my mum, the focus of the authorities was, why isn't she in school? Rather than, why is this child having babies? That's what shocked me the most. How could you treat a person like that? I just don't get it, people. You know. I suppose 2 decades later and the truth's fully come out now. It's absolutely shocking. I will leave the full report into this, which is volumes 1, 2, 3 and 4, in the comment section. And I think each and every one of you should take a moment to listen to what I'm saying, and to also spend a couple of hours looking over the full report. I know it's 1,500 pages long, but it will just show you the amount of cover-up that's been going on within the Telford area, and it's still continuing to this day. Perpetrators are still out there, they're still doing, and I do hope the police now stop it and get it stopped fully in the Telford area. Well guys, thanks for listening to this, and I hope you subscribe, like me videos, and ring the bell so you'll get a notification every time I produce a new video. Well, wishing you all a very good morning, and I'll catch up with you shortly. Thanks for listening, guys.